Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Inventure Podcast here with Doug and myself. Today we're going to take a look more in depth of a project that we're working on, something that we're working on from pre-development, trying to figure out where do we put sites, how do we deal with one big plot and then make it into actual sellable or spaces that we can build on for a couple clients of ours.
Yeah.
So taking a little more in depth today, so if you like stuff like this, follow along. Like, subscribe, and continue to help us grow here with the podcast that we're doing. So Doug, let's kick off maybe a little bit of background on the site that we're working on.
Yeah.
Maybe just tell a little high level about just a little bit about it.
Sure. So Sartell, Minnesota, right? So booming, I would call bedroom community of central Minnesota, so just north of St. Cloud. This particular site is just north of the city hall and police station police station and fire station that was developed about 3 or 4 years ago, I suppose, something like that. The farmers, the owners of the property, had slowly kind of partitioned off the property, sold some to some housing developments, and then the fire station and police station, and then ultimately ended up with about a 6.5 acre parcel as the last piece of this old farmstead. And so we represented the farmstead in selling their property. And along the way, we kind of had some ideas of what did this look like, what could it look like. And as developers, you start to think about what fills in the gaps, right? Mm-hmm. So what creates the land to its highest and best use, to maybe, percentage of coverages, how can we put the most
how
on
do you
it?
maximize it, right?
Yeah.
Put as many buildings on it as we can.
And it starts kind of with, what's around it, right? So you look at the surrounding, zoning. So to the west of this particular property, this is multifamily. So there's 3 or 4 large multifamily apartments. To the north, fire station, police station. South, there's kind of a retail corridor that leads south of it for a couple miles. So this whole big sweeping corner is kind of on a unique situation on a peninsula that we've looked at. Does it become gas station? Does it have a retail component? Could you put office there? Could you put multifamily as kind of a buffer zone? But really, again, highest and best use, we start to look at it as probably some type of retail concept, right? And so understanding, does the city allow this to happen, are some of the first elements that we'd look at as we're guiding even the seller, the current owner of the property. Can you achieve this, right? Because we don't want to go to market with a piece of property that we don't know. So early on, we kind of coach our clients, the sellers, what do they need to do? So in this case, we need to understand, is there wetlands around the property? We want to understand if it's buildable. Without spending a ton of money, we can do some soil borings and understand, is the property underneath the ground palatable with building reasonable sized buildings, right? If we're going to build huge multi-story buildings, the footings might get bigger, smaller, depending on what that soil looks like underneath. So drilling those soil borings down to about 15 feet gives us just a quick glimpse of what's the geology going on underneath of it. And from that point, we can then represent to the sellers, hey, you've got a piece of property that's valuable or less valuable, depending on what those soils are. Same thing, value is driven by what zonings go on, right? And so it's really ultimately up to the seller to decide what they want to do to entitle this property for more. Some sellers are like, hey, I just want to sell the property. I don't want to go through this process of going to the city, gaining the entitlements, making the property more valuable because I don't know how to do it. And that's where we can step in to help clients sometimes. Otherwise, they might go down the road and getting a ton of entitlements and doing all the platting work and stuff. And then the property's worth more to the buyers, right? Because then the buyers know it's prepped to be able to be built on closer than it was before, right? And so what's up on screen today is the future home of Von Hansen Meats. So the Von Hansen group has been a great client of ours that started working with us on this project. So they ultimately purchased the property from the sellers.
Yep.
The sellers opted to not do any of that entitlement work. They just said, you know what, we're done. We want to move on to our next piece of life. We're willing to sell it without any entitlements. We did get some soil borings done, so we knew the ground underneath it was good. And we had some indications, and I know you can't see my cursor very well, but we had some indications of what the stormwater ponding and the wetlands look like here. So this was a drawing that we had done for the sellers back in, early 2000s. I think it was pre-COVID, actually,
Probably,
Austin,
yeah.
right? And just to kind of break it up into some elements of, building sizes, what does it look like? What could it look like? And in fact, I think we even had a quick trip on here at one point, didn't we?
I think so, yeah.
We had a gas station on this concept. Fast forward, Quick Trip didn't move into this part of Sartell. They didn't really need it. So again, raw land that we moved on to. And so we started working with the city to understand, like, how do we gain access points into this property? It's really an important piece of the project, because if we can't get access or have one singular access, you can sometimes have a piece of property that's going to be amazing to look at.
Yeah, it seems amazing, but it doesn't have actual use.
You have no use for it, right? And so we've been working with the city of Sartell, and what we've determined is that this access point coming off of Pinecone Road is what's going to be granted by the city. Now, these are processes, this is early concept. All of this stuff has to go through the city, through planning and zoning, for ultimately the approval by the city, so that we can actually say, yes, this is the plan.
Correct.
Today, these are all what we call concept plans, right? So CDs. And so as Austin and I, as developers, we're just looking at it going, what can we fit on here? And this is sometimes done through civil engineers, maybe site designers. Sometimes it's just us as developers looking at it going, we have a general idea. Let's start with that general idea and see how dense can we put things? How many dollars can we make with the buildings that might get built on there? What is the cost of this development roughly? And does it make sense? If, ultimately it doesn't make sense, we abort mission, move on. In this case, Von Hansen's purchased the property. They see their home, or their second home in the St. Cloud area, being on this corner.
Yep.
So we know clearly that we're going to develop a building for this client. We maybe don't know how big it is yet, right? And in your opinion, Austin, in a situation where we've got a roundabout down here, traffic heading to St. Joe goes west, traffic going north and south on Pinecone Road to basically the bedroom community of Sartell, this area starts to kind of rise to the top as kind of the highest retail sector, right? Because you get the most eyes on this corner, right?
Yeah, it's got a lot of, it's like the good and bad of any site, right? Is when you look at this site, it's got good visibility, it's got good traffic, but it doesn't have the highest end traffic either, right?
Yep.
So like, it's good for users that are working from the people that are going home, but it doesn't have a high daytime traffic, right?
Yep.
So it's not like we're not going to get a restaurant in here or a huge user from that perspective, because there's not a lot of daytime traffic, right? But you can get a group that like Von Hansen's, where they're looking for people who are on their way home.
Yep.
Right, so they can stop, get meat, whatever it is.
Or they're up on the river and they're coming down for Saturday morning, grab some brat steaks because they're going on the river for the day.
Correct.
Yep.
Or you could have a potential coffee user or something along those, that are people that are coming from home, driving through the area to work. Right, so it's all about patterns when it comes to retail, or some type of medical use, right, where it is sandwiched in between, like you said, houses from St. Joe to houses in Sartell to even part of St. Cloud. You're kind of right in the middle of everything, which is a good use from a location standpoint.
So based on what we've been kind of talking this morning and spitballing some ideas, is that we still see, the primary, Von Hansen structure being here. Meeting with the client, we've kind of all come to an agreement that we probably should have a drive-through attached to this building. There's times where we can develop 2 drive-throughs in certain cases where it's, you got high traffic, high use. In this case, we probably would still make a nice 1,500 square foot or so space with stacking behind the building, traffic leading out, and then back out to Pinecone Road.
Yep.
But in this pink area, you can see where we were starting to think about, in this scenario, we had an 11,000 square foot restaurant. Today, post-COVID, there's very few 11,000 square foot restaurants being built, right?
Everything is fast.
And so what we started playing around with is going, what happens if we have a Von Hansen's in the orange here? And I'm just going to make these colors quickly a different color so we can see them better. And we start to make some smaller, as you kind of acknowledge, medical, could be aesthetics, could be a professional services client.
Could be, another retail. I mean, it could be anything that's small. Everyone wants standalone buildings, whether it's 2,200 square feet or 4,000 square feet. Seems like today's day and age, everyone wants their own building. Compared to being in multi-tenant for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. And so these green ones, and I'm actually going to make them really red so everybody can see them at home. These are representing about 5,000 square foot buildings. Could be a building that somebody comes to us and says, hey, I want you guys to develop this and lease it to me. Maybe they want to own part of it. You know, we are very flexible in the thought process around these buildings, right? As early development, we're just trying to create some scenarios that say, hey, people, if you're interested, give us some options, give us some plays. So these represent 5,000 or 5,500 square foot buildings. And what I can kind of generally do here is to pull those in, and we can see that, move my parking out of the way, that 2 buildings fit pretty nicely on this site. Now we have to consider stormwater ponding. There's a lot of things to consider. So even where this office building lied back here, we might ultimately create a pond that might be a regional pond in here so that we can maximize the area. We might put that pond underground, right? We might say, let's put that under the surface of the parking because the above grade is way more valuable than the below grade. So we can tuck those ponds underneath of there. And then ultimately all of this water, if I make this thing big enough, all of this water would actually flow in the direction of the ponds, right? And there's a small pond that we represented here, so maybe water flows that way. So this is how we, before we even get civil engineers involved, as developers, we sit here and we're trying to figure out what's kind of the general use that we see happening with this. And as you and I were talking this morning, maybe we could even leverage this a step further to create a scenario where maybe there's a little 2,000 to 3,000 square foot building that could maybe sit up in this area. And as we see traffic patterns, we can see traffic coming in. Traffic would come in and still flow through the parking lot, ultimately leaving the other side of the development, with this whole big green area still developed for something, right?
In the future.
In the future. We look at it, it could be, could it be some kind of multifamily? Maybe it's townhomes. Maybe there's a small townhome development there. Maybe it's, a strip center. Maybe there's some other office user that wants to have a nice setback in the corner. They've got a wetland in front here. So right now our focus is to try and get the retail development going because that's the highest return for the investors. It's also,
and they're the best sites that tenants want to be in.
And I was going to say, and it actually serves the purpose for the development, which is getting retail use in the city of Sartell, right? The city loves this thought of having that retail corner developed. And so as we think and talk to businesses, we've been, there have been businesses that reached out to us and say, hey, we've got an interest in this corner, right? So as people are watching this, again, if you're interested in being part of a retail corner that's going to be developed in 2027, give us a call. We've got signs out there. You can reach us on Facebook, LinkedIn, other places, but this is how we start with development. We don't put people's names on these boxes, but we do know that Von Hansen's will be here. And we do know that we probably will develop a drive-through element in and on their building specifically. But what we can represent is we probably got a 3,000 to 5,000 square foot, two buildings here, and maybe a 2,000 to 3,000 square foot building up there. So definitely opportunities for people to look at. We don't design the buildings now. We don't put, because we have no idea what it could look like, right? So what we're going to ultimately do is probably and we just met with this client with Von Hansen's last week. So this is why we can now start moving into this next concept of going, let's start doing some preliminary design layouts, figure out what the building's sizes look like, but then ultimately, let's say a medical user buys a lot, they want to build their own building, they can design it the way they want, right? They could have us design it, we could do the work to help develop it, they could work on it themselves, right? We're super flexible in this. Ultimately, the goal is bring businesses to Sartell, fill the development, create the return for the risk that Von Hansen's took to buy this property.
And that's the look of development, right? Is that exact same thing? You're trying to find a vacant piece of land that has value that you can bring value to it for whatever the businesses that are going in, but also the community that it's going in, right? It's got to be a win-win on that side of it when you're doing ground development like this, because If it's not, then it's just kind of a crappy old building that gets tore down in the next 25 years, right? And we see plenty of them.
Or it sits as farmland for the forever, right?
And somebody's got to go forward, take the risk, put the plans together, dream a lot, right? Because this is basically all dreaming, right? It's not reality yet. It's more dreaming with how we're going to change it from a dream to a reality with the client that we have, and making this actually happen and making it come to life.
Yeah.
But it's dreaming. I mean, from the start, right? When we started working on this thing, it's dreaming, and we've been working on this kind of development idea really for 5 years plus.
And ultimately, we look at it, we can lay a dream out, and then tomorrow morning we get a phone call with somebody going, hey, I want to build that 11,000 square foot building.
You never know.
And then we have to pivot, right?
Yeah,
and
I can say one thing, and then the next day it'll be like that user comes out and they're like, yeah, I want to do that. I'm like, I would not have thought that was going to happen, but okay.
And part of development is honestly talking about these projects, right? So we can put it out on Facebook, LinkedIn, things like that, but working through this and getting people to understand what's available is really the most important part. So, if you're thinking of a business in Sartell, you want to understand more of what this development looks like, again, give us a call. This is not a sales pitch. This is just an opportunity that I would love to see somebody that wants to put their business in Sartell, grow in Sartell. This is a great opportunity because this is highly seen. I don't even know what the car units are coming down here, but it's substantial, right? So it's a high visibility, high opportunity corner in the city of Sartell.
Yeah, and that's what we really want to do today, right? Is just to walk through with everyone what we do on a day-to-day basis and how some of these projects happen, because I feel like a lot of times it's all hidden behind the scenes to some degree, right? To where people, the everyday person or the person that's looking for more information of how does development work, they don't get the behind the scenes of where do you start from. Everyone sees it from the building's going up, that's development, right? You're just all of a sudden the building's going up. Well, there's so much work that happens in the front end of that way before the excavator comes and takes one scoop of dirt out of the ground, right? There's so much time and work that goes into that of how do you make this work? How do you find the right users, and how do you make it so it's vibrant and good for the long term? So
and it's interesting you say that because we're working on this today, right? So the viewers at home are watching this. Think about what are we today? March 18th of 2026, right? Not even a year from now, we won't even be breaking ground yet.
Correct.
So we're well over a year ahead of this, probably a year to a year and a half ahead of anybody actually seeing something happening on this site.
Yep.
And previous to that, we worked with Von Hansen's for probably 6 months previous. And then, as you said, this concept plan is from 2020, and we're in 2026, right? Mm-hmm. So by the time we break ground, we'll be in the 7th year of this development, just to get it to the point, because sometimes economic headwinds don't allow us to do it, right? Mm-hmm. When we were planning the gas station and everything originally, we were thinking this was a golden opportunity for them to take it, do something with it, and then COVID hit, right? That was more of an economic hit that no one could plan for. But, interest rates, you name it, land costs, all those things play into, does it make sense for somebody to take on a development today, right? And without the users, the developments don't exist, right? Because we can build and develop buildings and have the most amazing layout of a lifestyle center or whatever you want to call it, but if there's no tenants inside of it, there's no expansion. There's nothing to build for, right? So ultimately, it's gaining those users, those tenants that want to be or own, right? They could own the property here too and buy a lot and develop their own building. So lots of opportunities, lots of options. I think the end that I would finish up with this is just to say there's a lot of flexibility, right? If you're interested in having a business in Sartell, owning a building in Sartell, partnering with us on a building in Sartell, all of those options exist. It's really starting with...
Or if you even just want to learn about the process, right? We can help teach people the process of how this works. And it's more of just what the behind the scenes, what actually goes into a development here is really what we want to show everyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you're from Sartell, sure. There's the ability that you could be in this totally. We just want to be able to show how development really works before it happens.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of that gist of how it happens, what goes into it, and how we can help and also how you can learn from it too, right? So if you like this video, this type of video, we're kind of going more behind the scenes of like how a project actually works from a pre-concept type look. Follow along, comment in it, say what types of videos you guys want to see, what types of projects you want us to kind of dig into and look at, and we're more than happy to kind of tailor content around that. So with that, everyone have a great day, and thank you for watching, and tune in next time.
Take care.